Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. I hope you all are doing absolutely fantastic. No doubt you're doing better than Bungie, who's rightfully being torn up for blatantly plagiarizing the work of a very skilled artist by the name of Fernhook, whose story we're sharing today. Keep in mind, as we go through this video, this is absolutely not a oopsies, or it's kind of close, but no, it's directly lifted. And not only that, but this is one of many claims that have been laid at the feet of Bungie over the years. And now it's happening again with Marathon. It's almost like this studio has a problem at its core with directly lifting work from online artists and fly a little too close to the sun, if you want to put it generously. Anyway, the story of Fernhook is being shared here today. She is the skilled artist that Bungie has blatantly ripped off. If you find yourself moved by this story, whether it be, hey, she might want to sue Bungie. Okay, I want to give her money for those legal fees. Or, hey, Bungie obviously didn't pay her for any of this based on the call out she put out there. I want to give her some money because I want my cash going to the artist who actually pretty much is responsible for the visual identity of Marathon. Whatever it may be, I'll have a link down below where you can go ahead, click on that, and send some cash her way. I already did so, but that's up to you if you want to. I think just sharing her story is more than enough, so don't feel too pressured about it. But nonetheless, let's get this started. So, Fern shares on her Twitter account, the Marathon Alpha released recently, and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. Now, this isn't, like I said, an oopsies, as you'll see immediately that, number one, you're like, well, what's Marathon and what exactly is the poster design? That's part of the point. It's very hard to tell because of how directly the design language has been lifted here. Not just, oh, it's minimalist, 1990s, futuristic vibe. No. Look at some of the details that are highlighted here. Everything down to Aleph being on certain assets in the game, the line, the writing beneath it, the arrow placements, how they look, the symbols, the numbers, everything lifted. So then, Fern continues on. Bungie is, of course, not obligated to hire me when making a game. That draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I've refined for the last decade. But clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. I don't have the resources nor the energy to spare to pursue this legally, but I have lost count of the number of times a major company has deemed it easier to pay a designer to imitate or steal my work than to write me an email. In 10 years, I have never made a consistent income from this work, and I am tired of designers from huge companies mood boarding and parasiting my designs while I struggle to make a living. And if you just needed a little bit more to inch you over the line, like, well, it's just close, which I can't stand the whataboutism, like, well, I'm just trying to be devil's advocate. It's like, this is not a situation for it. I'm sorry. Like, I'll be the one to say it. It's just not a situation where we're looking for the balance here. This is not one of those nuanced conversations. Bungie did something very wrong, and as we'll talk about in a second, not just like one kind of rogue in the squad, multiple. And when you have this many claims against Bungie, it's a fucking joke. So what you've got here is Fern writing in 2024, I hid loss in my design 6 years ago and nobody caught on. And someone wrote just this week, here from the future, if anyone doubts the theft of your art, this also confirms it. And you can see the loss comic in a minimalist design. For those who don't have this context, because I'm there with you. I had to have, bless our editor, Dan, explain this all to me. I was like, what is loss? I've seen this comic strip before. I'm like, okay, this thing here. Right. So it turns into a massive meme in internet culture. And now there's even minimalist versions of loss, just paying homage to this hilarious internet meme. So as we see, when we go back to this, they even lifted the abstract take on the loss comic because they are that creatively bankrupt. That is fucking hilarious, dude. But it gets more interesting here. My man Gene Park, who I do a lot of podcasting with over on Last Stand Media, we just had a hilarious episode of Defining Duke together talking about Doom, the Dark Ages. We talked a lot about cocaine, but nonetheless, Washington Post is where my man Gene Park works, and he got the opportunity to interview Fern. He writes, artist accuses PlayStation game of lifting her work. Studio admits to oversight. Marathon, she said, is covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017, all in the alpha version of the game, which allowed the general public to play an early version of the multiplayer shooter. She became suspicious when the game was announced in a 2023 trailer, but nothing appeared to be derivative at first. In mid-April, content creators began publishing early videos of Marathon gameplay. She said she very quickly began to spot her work. Hook's futuristic iconography and font designs are posted on social media sites like Tumblr and X as far back as 2017, and similar features are seen all over the environment and the objects within Marathon, which she pointed out, and I've already highlighted this tweet here. Quote, "It was kind of vindicating to see direct plagiarism because it meant I wasn't crazy for feeling so uncomfortable with the overall direction," end quote. Hook told the Washington Post. Quote, "I kept quiet about it because I was advised to seek legal action, but I don't have enough time or money to fly out to the US to pursue an unwinnable court case against Sony," end quote. I'm not a legal expert. That would be a question for our man Hoglaw, but yeah, like something's got to be taking the Bungie here, man. This is because I don't even know how to word this because we're literally talking about blatant plagiarism. So I don't feel like I need to explain it, but it's not even like, oh, it's a gun skin, right? We're talking about the literal visual identity of Marathon. In fact, probably the one good looking thing about the game, in my opinion, at least. Okay, I'm speaking from the outside looking in, never put my hands on the game, but when I saw it was an extraction shooter, even down to like Arc Raiders, which is kind of taking over where Marathon was trying to head, I look at these games and I'm like, they're just not for me. I'm glad people are having fun. But what did interest me in Marathon was the artistic style. And as we'll talk about too, the music, which is mighty similar to the SoundCloud of Fern as well. I wonder what happened there. You strip all of that away, what is Marathon? And I just, it's absurd, the selfishness. That's what I really wanted to pinpoint here before we get into Bungie's response to this all. It's the selfishness of it all. Because even if it was just one person, which it is not, even if it was just one person, a rogue former artist at Bungie, which, spoiler alert, that's what they're claiming. Even if it was just one person, that amount of selfishness can tank an entire project. This is something I talked about on Defining Duke pretty extensively when Avowed was going through its own controversy because of a certain person working on the game who made it all about themselves. And now when you know it's more of a team effort here, or at least it seems strongly to be a team effort, the amount of selfishness that is on display there and how it affects different departments that also put their time, effort, energy into this project for years, for this to all come crumbling down on them because people were that creatively bankrupt and insecure that they had to rob someone, is a fucking embarrassment, dude. It is. And it's selfish. It's selfish. And these people who are responsible genuinely should never be hired again. It's that simple because they tanked a project. There will never be a moment where we can take the visual identity of this seriously. And hey, honestly, from what I've heard, Marathon already needed a delay, and now it definitely needs one because now you got to overhaul a lot of textures, a lot of assets, and make sure this thing, when you plan to sell it, because I'm imagining the defense here will be legally, like, it's an alpha. We're still figuring, it's not the final product, whatever the hell it may be. But when you start to sell this damn thing, it has to be scrubbed clean. And that's what I'll talk about next, because you'd think that would be the initial stance. But they write, we immediately investigated a concern regarding unauthorized use of artist decals in Marathon and confirmed that a former Bungie artist included these in a texture sheet that was ultimately used in-game. This issue was unknown by our existing art team, and we are still reviewing how this oversight occurred. We take matters like this seriously, and we've reached out to Fern to discuss this issue and are committed to doing right by the artist. As a matter of policy, we do not use the work of artists without their permission. You might want to check that fucking policy because it keeps happening. Okay, to prevent similar issues in the future, we are conducting a thorough review of our in-game assets, specifically those done by former Bungie artists, and implementing stricter checks to document all artist contributions. We value the creativity and dedication of all artists who contribute to our games, and we are committed to doing right by them. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Yeah. Here's a crazy fucking idea that you can just take the ball and run with for free, because that's what you guys know how to do, Bungie. Here's free advice, because you don't want to pay for it. So here you go. Okay. Do this in the first place. Whoa. How about that? How about if it happens once, it's a fucking red flag. In that moment there, the first response should be, we can never have this happen again. Okay. We're going to conduct thorough reviews of our assets when they're submitted to make sure there's no plagiarism. Reverse image searches exist for a reason. Just reverse image search your texture sheet. See what comes up. See the similarities. It is that fucking easy, bro. But no, now we've been caught red-handed. It's like, we're going to do a thorough review of our in-game assets and make sure it's part of the process. Now, where things get really crazy, as if it wasn't already crazy enough, is you'd think with how far spread this mess has become that you would just leave it there, right? You have your Twitter post, just call it there. They had a planned marathon stream for today, May 16th, and they actually went through with it. They actually went live, decided not to show the game because of all of the plagiarism accusations, and all the chat was loaded up with statements like plagiarism will make me God, as two members of the marathon team, one of them being the art director, issued a written statement on what's going on with marathon and how they're going to make things right. So I'll let you listen for yourself, but I'm going to warn you now, it's not going to change a thing about how you feel.
Came to our attention that an artist who worked on marathon took elements from a graphic designer without permission or acknowledgement and placed them on a decal sheet that was then checked in 2020. The decal sheet included icons and text elements. These elements ended up in our alpha build, and there's absolutely no excuse for this oversight, and we are working on and 100% committed to our review process to ensure instances like this don't happen again on Marathon or at Bungie. A few of the things that we've done over the last 24 hours and what we're doing to shore up the review process are as follows. We've reached out to Anti-Real, the artist in question, and followed up to ensure that we do right by this artist. We're auditing all of the previous work by the artist, the internal artist, including the environment decals already in the build, which is part of why we're delaying some of the content we're going to show today. And we're committed to removing anything that is questionably or inappropriately sourced. We're doing a very broad decal audit, and if we locate any other details or elements, we'll make sure that those are eliminated, recreated in-house for sure. Hundreds of artists have worked on this project for years, internally and externally, and we share many influences, including modernism, Swiss typography, 2000s style vector art, cyberpunk, and of course the original Marathon trilogy. Our style is a result of all of those inspirations. And it's also worth noting that none of our external partners who've worked on branding or any part of the visual design of our game were involved with this situation. And lastly, personally, I have a huge amount of respect and admiration for artists working independently and producing, and making a living doing commercial or fine art. And we've worked with many of them. It's one of my favorite parts of the job is to make those connections and create content and collaborate. And so to that extent, I want to send my personal apology to Anti-Real, whose work was used in this case. And I know how unfair this feels, and we're doing everything we can to make this right with her. Her work is fantastic, and we clearly share mutual appreciation for a specific genre of graphic design, and it's very exciting, and I'm excited to have folded that into our style in general. So thanks for listening, and thanks for your patience.
Here's where things get really interesting, because Bungie says former artist, former artist, former artist. And I imagine right now, if I were to make a prediction what's happening in the art room, it's a lot of this. A lot of finger pointing. This person, this person, this person, this person, trying to get the blame off of them. Because this is legit, if you're an artist, career-ending shit, right? It's one thing if you can get out of this clean, like, I didn't plagiarize, I was just part of the team. But, dude, if you get nailed with this, you are so beyond fucked. It's not even funny. So, right here, we have a little bit of an exchange between Fern and someone else on Twitter saying, I see that Joseph Cross also follows you, who works at Bungie as an artist. Is there any insight you can give about the connection there? He's followed me for a few years, and a few others from Bungie never had any communication. That's the other thing, is that people have now dug up that Bungie does follow this woman, and not just one person, but multiple Bungie artists. And all of a sudden, all her work starts to appear in the game. Shameless. And again, there have been multiple examples of this. How about this one right here? A Nerf Ace of Spades gun even has the similar brushstrokes, scratches, and smudges of Tofu Rabbit. And so they got nabbed. And poor Fern, alongside another artist, getting directly ripped by even Team Liquid, selling merch with a logo ripped directly from Demass3's work for Detroit Underground and glyphs traced from one of my designs. And the icing on the cake, really, and this one I think is still under investigation, but it's just something that you should be talking about. I want to highlight this tweet here from @Yushio-chan, who pointed something out that is just a perfect term, because it's not just the art, which is more than enough, right? This is more than enough to just be like, what the fuck is happening here? But also the music is very similar. And as Yushio wrote here, they stole her entire creative identity, right? Can you imagine, like, art is an expression of you in some way, shape, or form. It's an expression of you, as many of us already know. I don't need to explain it any further than that. And when it's an expression of you and you are never feeling like you are good enough to be hired, but good enough to be ripped off, like, what does that say to you? And why would you continue this if, in her words, it's happened for years and years and years, but then it happens in this massive level where it's not just like, hey, you know, a little corner of the game, a little skin, which is still, again, more than enough, a huge problem. But we're talking about the entire visual identity of the game. What does that say to her? Especially, we're talking about a PlayStation-owned first-party studio. You can't pony up. Like, if that work is so good, you can't go to this individual and talk about bringing them on board collaboratively, oversight, hiring them. Again, I respect her saying, I'm not entitled to being hired, but I would literally be out there being like, fucking hire me, dude. If that's how badly you want my work, fucking hire me. I don't think she'd be remotely entitled, without blatantly it's been lifted, to be calling for money, to be calling for hire. It's so clear they like her work a lot, at the least. So yeah, like, no doubt this game needs to be delayed for sure at this moment in time, because they need to remove all of this. They need that time, as if they deserve it. They need that time. This game already had DOA energy, in my opinion, and I think it's going to be even more so now, because the one standout quality for it, for at least hardcore gamers, people in our circle who like talk about this frequently, has been stripped away. So now that visual identity feels fruitless, even if maybe there were people who were just innocently working on directives they've been given. It's just fruitless. And so here comes Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders is already smelling like the one that was going to do what people wanted from Bungie in the first place. Because you got to remember, one of the big problems with Marathon was that they were clearly launching too early. They were saying like mechanics weren't ready to go, that were expected, like an extraction shooter without proximity chat. You think that's an automatic, right? But not in the case of Marathon, where Arc Raiders is showing up and having all the things people are looking for in Marathon. So Arc Raiders is likely sitting there going, yo, Bungie, keep cooking. You just by existing is helping us out. So yeah, man, unbelievable. Like, just the level of selfishness is unbelievable to me. And I think that dark part of humanity will always surprise me, because it's just so selfish on a grand scale that I wonder if the people working there ever processed, when going through all of this, how bad it could be. Did you think you wouldn't get caught? And it's the same thing we talked about with like Philip Musin and IGN. It's like, did you think you weren't going to get caught? Are you that insecure? Are you that unsure of your work? Are you that petty that you couldn't pay someone for the work you liked most, that you had to come up with it yourself, that you had to extract into the genre of the game? There's extraction shooters took on a whole new term, extract all value out of someone else's work and absorb it as your own. That human element of this all is kind of what disturbs me most, especially when, if you've been called out multiple times for plagiarism at Bungie, like, you'd think you'd be on the edge of your seat when you hire new artists, right? Like, when you bring new artists in, what exactly that would entail. I don't know. I'm out of things to say now. Fire this fucking game into the sun, dude. I'm not touching this piece of shit. And frankly, I hope not many other people do. It's just a game that from top to bottom mechanically isn't ready. It's launching way too early, and visually now is creatively bankrupt. And I hope that Fern gets her cash. And again, I'll remind you, if you want to support her, link is down below after hearing her story. But that's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know your thoughts on what's going on with Marathon and Bungie down below. And I'll catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.